Welcome to the Market Mystics podcast, where we discuss what's happening in the cryptosphere and trading on earth as it is in heaven. Buckle up and huddle on while we dive in and get weird. Here are your hosts, Joshua and Kim.
Hello, all you beautiful listeners. Welcome to Thursday with the Market Mystics. What's going on today, Kim?
Not a whole lot personally, but I'm kind of excited about this episode today. We get to do some speculation, and that's always fun.
It is fun, yes. All right, well, let's dive into that. So quick, I'll just run through some market updates. We have Bitcoin is up 2.2% in 24 hours, 11.1% over 7 days, currently trading at $23,062. That's a pretty amazing change from about a month ago, I would say, probably.
Mhm.
We have Ethereum kind of following a little bit of a similar pattern. It's up 4% in 24 hours, up 5.5% over 7 days, trading at $1,604. I think that's notable because so today is Thursday. We recorded on Monday. On Monday, the price of Ethereum was $1,605. So it's
Oh.
$1 difference for the week. That's interesting, I think.
Mhm.
The top mover is actually one of the top 10 coins, which is wild to see. A lot of times the volatility doesn't exist within the top 10 coins for that,
Mhm.
but it's Polygon. It trades as Matic, MATIC. It's the number 10 coin, barely scraped in the top 10, but it's there. It is up 14.4% in 24 hours, 15.5% over 7 days, currently trading at $1.09. Polygon is a Web3 token. Polygon is a decentralized Ethereum scaling platform that enables developers to build scalable, user-friendly dApps with low transaction fees without ever sacrificing on security.
Hmm.
So it's a layer 2 for Ethereum.
True. I've used Polygon before for NFT listings.
Mm-hmm.
And that was because it was significantly less expensive than Ethereum.
Yeah. So it's fun to see a top 10 coin have some big move. I mean, Bitcoin has a pretty good move, Ethereum's had a pretty good move, but to see that 24-hour number really jump is pretty exciting.
Heck yeah. Okay, so let's talk about Bitcoin and its big move over the last month. It's actually, I need to find my I'm sorry, I need to find my dates on here because I have a date on when
Yeah.
it really started pumping.
Yeah, it really started moving about the 10th of January. It started creeping up a little bit a few days before that.
It says that since the beginning of the year, it has recorded 29% growth in price, which is a very large jump, especially when we've seen things so flat for the last 6 months,
Yeah.
probably, maybe longer.
Yeah. So it was trading around the 20 mark up until November. And then it dove down and has set around the 16, 17 mark,
Right.
November, December, and the beginning of January.
Right.
But it hasn't been back to the where it's currently sitting at now, above 23. It hasn't been that since July or August. So yeah.
Yeah, that's wild. Okay, so I wanted to talk about this because I've actually been hearing some speculation. I was hearing it kind of through the grapevine, which that still happens. Like real life, the grapevine is still there. You just have to listen. So this was through a person who heard it from another person who heard it from another person that this was happening with Bitcoin and kind of the reason behind it. But there's also an article I found from Fox News, Tucker Carlson, one of their kind of big names on that news source, reported on this a few days ago. And he speculates that the White House was forced to buy Bitcoin to pay cyber attackers to release control of US airspace. And then that is the reason why Bitcoin has been pumping, because the US government had to buy so much Bitcoin to get the control back for these systems. Essentially, what it is reporting is it is a computer system that is run by the FAA that controls all of the airspace. And if you look around that same date, January 11th, the FAA halted nationwide departures, delaying thousands of flights due to a quote unquote computer outage. According to the transportation agency, this was due to a technical issue with the notice to air mission system, which is NOTAM. Is that what you actually call it?
Mm-hmm.
Top secret. Josh has some history in aviation, so he knows these things.
This is true.
Anyway, the agency said our preliminary work has traced the outage to a damaged database file. At this time, there's no evidence of a cyber attack. However, funny enough, the next day, Canada had exactly the same thing happen. And Bitcoin continued to pump. And so what it is sounding like, this is why I think this is a fun topic. It's speculation because obviously I don't think the national government of the United States of America wants to confirm that they had their systems, number one, hacked, and number two, they paid a ransom. I think there are things about, not paying terrorists or anything.
Mm-hmm.
But I find it very interesting because there's a lot of evidence that is kind of correlating around all of this that shows this could be quite legit. So I find it interesting that there's a couple news stories about it, but they're all speculation. But also through the grapevine, things are also coming through about something very similar. What I had heard through my grapevine was it didn't have to do with the FAA, but it did have to do with the US government being hacked, having a computer system hacked and held for ransom, and they had to pay in Bitcoin, which resulted in the pump. And it also included Canada doing the same thing the next day. So I find that interesting. I think there are a couple TikTok videos out there. They may have been canceled by now. I don't know. Taken down for whatever reason. I mean, maybe this podcast will be taken down for whatever reason. I don't know. This is all speculation. I have no hard facts about this, but I did want to talk about it just because I find it really, really interesting. Okay, so the government is obviously not the biggest fan of Bitcoin. They've made it fairly clear. There's a lot of not kind things being said about cryptocurrency in general, especially Bitcoin. And as much as, I don't want damage to happen to these systems, like the FAA and stuff, it's a little bit funny to me. I'm just being honest. It's a little bit funny to me that the US government, who holds the king currency, had a hack, had to pay something in its biggest rival, Bitcoin.
Well,
the coin that could take out the US dollar, the US government had to pay for and had to transact in. And that is a bit of irony to me.
What's interesting to me is, our government likes to spin things for different narratives in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And so, of course, they're probably not going to tell you the real reason or the FAA stuff. It's going to be, it's a corrupted database. Maybe that's true. Maybe it's not. I don't know.
It could have been corrupted by ransomware.
Right. Yeah. But they're not going, you're probably never going to get the whole story from them. But the government loves to use things like, the FTX thing or other crypto things to show that the average investor is not smart enough to understand Bitcoin, and that's why it needs to be regulated. And I could see this being a great opportunity for them to be like, look, this ransom had to be paid in Bitcoin and Bitcoin's corrupt and you can't do it. But for them to use that narrative, they would also have to admit what happened. And that's probably equally like, they're holding, if that's true, if this whole thing is true, then they're holding this like double-edged sword of like, oh, which one do we want to admit, or do we just not look at it and not handle it at
Right.
all?
Right.
And I know it's not the first time Bitcoin's been used for that. I personally know of a large company in America that produces meat and meat products that had a hack on one of their systems, and they were held for like, I think it was like 7 million in Bitcoin that had to be transferred to get them out of that, to get access to their files back. And so it's not the first time it's been used. And Kim and I were sort of discussing like, oh man, like we don't want that narrative around Bitcoin that it's used for ransoms. But at the same time, what currency hasn't been used for that? You
Exactly.
know, every movie you watch when people are dealing with terrorists, oh, I want 20 bags of unmarked cash, and it's there's so many aspects to this that are you can paint the narrative of, oh well, they were able to do that because it was cryptocurrency. No, they've been doing that forever. Like,
Exactly.
it's just whatever narrative you want to stand by at the time. But Bitcoin's is no better or worse than cash is in regards for illicit activities.
I
It's just
completely agree.
another tool.
Hmm. I think, last week I took the liberty of reading some articles that are very anti cryptocurrency. If you want to find those, I mean, you can go to any like major media source. Like this one was from the LA Times. And it's interesting because it tends to be the biggest argument against Bitcoin or cryptocurrency is that it has such a high potential of corruption. If you look at, I'm going to talk just to Bitcoin now. If you look at the ideology behind Bitcoin, it actually does not lend itself to corruption. It lends itself to all sorts of validation and security. But what the individual does with it and how they choose to transact is a different story. So I think that that's where the line has to be drawn here. Like you can't say, hey, this currency is innately corrupt, right? It all has to do with the user. And I know that there's a lot of arguments too, and this is why governments are wanting to regulate so heartily, especially in the US after the 2008 market crash. There's this whole Dodd-Frank Act, and they want all of these consumer protections out there because somehow the economy crashing equated to the government that the individual has no business trying to self-govern their finances,
Mm,
which I think is a load of baloney. Just quite frankly, I think it takes away the responsibility in exchanging value.
mhm,
And when you do that, I think that actually takes value away from the individual. And so I want to talk to this concept or this accusation that Bitcoin is corrupt or cryptocurrency as a whole is corrupt. I don't think that's actually it. I think you have to dial it down and be a bit more subjective about it. Can it be used for nefarious purposes? It can. We
mhm,
just, if we're looking at this story that we're even talking about today, can it be used to pay a ransom because a hacker got into something? It can. But before Bitcoin was ever created, so let's look at 2010,
mhm.
was that ability still there? And did they not then transact in the US dollar? because it held
or
the
in
value that
or in
everybody
any
wanted,
other or in any other currency.
or in any other currency. And
Mhm.
so to me, what this says is Bitcoin is actually becoming a bit more legitimate as something that holds innate value and can actually be transactable. Yes, it's not because of the best reason, but if you dial it back, so we're just talking subjective, let's talk objectively. Does this show me that people in general, now US governments, global governments, including the US government, actually see that it holds value and it can be exchanged for value? I think yes.
I agree, and I think it's fascinating to see the progress and just the narrative around Bitcoin, but its use in these various ways, like, yeah, I think it lends itself to legitimacy to see it like, okay, it's first used to purchase pizza. So we're transacting for food, and now I can go on like Newegg and purchase electronics with it. And at one point, I'm not sure if you still can, but at one point you could purchase cars with it.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's being used or possibly being used for ransom situations. Like, I think Kim's right that all of those details lend to showing that it has value in and of itself, not value compared to something else. Because if you're a hacker, and you're doing that as a ransom, you're probably not going to take that to an exchange and exchange it for a fiat currency. So it has to have value to you in Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I just find it to be very interesting. I know that's not based upon the best circumstances because the
Right.
story isn't like a super happy story that something was hacked and then held for ransom. But I think at the core of the value of Bitcoin, I think it says a lot.
I think so. Yeah. I
And we
think it
probably
speaks to
won't be hearing a
legitimacy.
lot about it from other news sources. My guess is
We'll never hear of it.
right. The government would rather take that and like miss the point in having it marred in some way rather than admitting that there was a weakness in their system and they got hacked.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah,
my
I
guess. I
agree.
mean,
Well, and if they were to admit it, I would argue that it probably opens them up to more hacks. Like,
mhm,
if people find out that they were hacked and they paid a ransom, it's going to open the door for more people to do that. So it's in the government's best interest to not. I would say if this storyline is true, it's in the government's best interest to not acknowledge it.
right, right. Uh, yeah, super interesting stuff.
Yeah. All right. Well, do you have anything else to add?
I don't think I do.
Cool.
I'll
Well,
probably
let's
come up with
wrap it up.
something 20 minutes from now and be like, darn it,
Dang it,
should
we
have
should
said
have
that.
talked about that. All right. Well, we'll see you guys on Monday.
See you later. Thank you for listening. Join us every Monday and Thursday as we discuss trading on earth as it is in heaven. If you want to connect further, follow us on social media at market.mystics for Instagram and TikTok, and search for Market Mystics on YouTube and Facebook. If you still need more, follow the link on Facebook to book a coaching appointment. Until next time, see ya.